little stream here, or at least it's supposed to be. While you're here, like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm Guy, sponsored by Tito's Handmade Vodka. Now ask yourself this. If there is a team better than you, better than your team, and they're going to kick your ass, would you want to play them once before you play them in the Super Bowl? The answer to that question is yes. If you know the future, and in the future, there's a team that wipes the floor with you, would you want to know that before you play them in the biggest game of the year? Yes. Just so happens that after watching Niners-Ravens on Monday night, I cracked open my classic copy of Charles Dickens' book, A Christmas Carol. Many of you are familiar with it. And I got to the part of the book, I read the whole thing. I got to the part of the book where Ebenezer Scrooge is taken by the ghosts of Christmases yet to come. You know, he'd seen the ghost of Christmas past, he'd seen the ghost of Christmas present, and then he got the ghost of Christmases yet to come. And he'd seen a man, an old man, the visions of him and his death and how people were satisfied with it. The room that he was in had, you know, raggedy curtains. There was a couple that owed him money. They were celebrating because he died. And Ebenezer Scrooge wasn't totally positive if that was him or not. And the ghost of Christmas future points to a grave, and he just points. And Scrooge is obviously unnerved. He's afraid to, you know, brush the dirt back off of the tombstone and see the name. And he says, before I draw, and I'm reading now, page whatever. Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of things that will be? Or are they the shadows of things that may only be? He asks essentially, is this in stone? Or can I change the course of my actions and thus change my future? And we know the answer is he can change his actions and change the course of the future and change his story. And that's the Niners. The Ravens game was a gift from the ghost of Super Bowl futures. And the question is, are they better off for having played the game or not? And the answer is unequivocally yes. Now, if they'd won that game 31-7, would they be better for it? I don't know. I mean, they'd be guaranteed essentially pretty locked in, not guaranteed, but pretty locked into a 1 seed. There's, as I count them, 3 things that can really go wrong from the Niners' loss that could keep it from being a positive in the end. Number one thing, they don't get the 1 seed. That could be bad. You lose to the football team or you lose to the Rams and the Eagles went out. You end up as the 2 seed. You lose the bye. You lose home field and you're rattled. But the Ravens beating them doesn't mean any of that stuff has to happen, right? They're tied with the Eagles. You go win your next 2 games. You're the 1 seed, no problem. Okay, so that's number one. That's the number one. That's one. There's 3 things. Number one. Number 2, the 49ers lose their confidence that if they were to play the Ravens again, let's say they're getting ready for the Super Bowl and they're shook. That kind of thing they got that they believe nobody can beat them, they lost it. The Ravens stole it from them. Somehow the Niners, despite it being stolen from them, get to the Super Bowl, but deep down in their core, they don't think they can beat the Ravens. So that'd be the number 2 problem that arises. And the third problem that could arise is that that same thing that I just described happens specifically to Brock Purdy, that he's so rattled he can't recover from it. All right, so let's go through those things. Number 1, like I said, if they don't get the 1 seed because they lost to the Ravens, it's actually they don't get the 1 seed because they either lose to the Washington football team or to the Rams. It's not because they lost to the Ravens. So I'm going to throw that one out. Number 2, they have their confidence stolen. I don't buy it. I don't buy that losing to the Ravens would put them at a disadvantage when it comes to confidence if they were to rematch in the Super Bowl. There's nothing about Debo. There's nothing about Kittle. There's nothing about Trent Williams. There's nothing about McCaffrey. There's nothing about Ayuk. There's nothing about Fred Warner or Juszczyk or Eric Armstead if he were to play in the game. God willing. Mooney, right? Like all these guys there's really no evidence that beating them rattles them to the point that they can't recover from it. So I wouldn't buy that for a second. I don't think this would have a hangover. Well, hangover is not the right word. I don't think it would have a negative effect on their own self-confidence when they step on the field of the Legion Stadium to play the Baltimore Ravens. And number three, if Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy learn nothing from that game and can't adjust to the things that Mike McDonald and that Ravens defense did to them, then they don't deserve to win the Super Bowl anyway. But if given the choice between giving Purdy a preview of how tough it could be, of giving Kyle Shanahan a preview of what Mike McDonald's defense would try to do to his offense, you would 100% take that. Like if I told you before the season, you're going to be the 1 seed in the NFC, and you have 2 options. You're going to play the team you play in the Super Bowl. You either beat them by 40 or you lose to them, by 2 scores. You would, without question, choose the beat them by 40. That would feel a lot better. But I do think the thing you'd guarantee is that you get a shot at them again if you lose. And so if you think about, like, would they rather face Baltimore? Would they rather face Buffalo? Would they rather face Kansas City? I mean, right now, in one hand, it feels like you would rather face anybody but Baltimore, given what they just did to you. Take Buffalo. Take Kansas City. And maybe that's true. Like, there's some truth to, if that's the best team, hope that somebody trips them up along the way. But you don't know exactly what those teams would do to you. Now, the reason you don't want to play Baltimore is not because you don't think you can beat them. I don't think it's just because they look like the best team. But if you're going to play the best team, I think you want to do it with some advanced knowledge of what's on the test. And the Niners got some advanced. Now, did Baltimore get some advanced knowledge of what the Niners try to do? Hell yeah. In fact, it looked like they had a pretty good idea what the Niners try to do. But the most inexperienced guy in the whole bunch is the Niners quarterback. It's not Lamar. It's not the Ravens staff. It's not the Niners staff. It's the 49ers quarterback. He's the most inexperienced of the bunch. And so the experience, the flip side of that is it's the most valuable for him. So I think all in all, you got given a gift. And that gift is a preview of what the best team in the league, definitely the best team in the AFC, but right now the best team in the league would try to do to you if you play in a Super Bowl. Now, would they change it up? Of course. Would they do things differently? Most definitely. Would you be on edge because they had a pretty good plan the first time? Yes. But I think it would only be a win for the Niners in that sense, should they meet again. I think they're lucky for it. As painful as it was for them, I think they're lucky for it. They got a glimpse of the future, specifically the experience of playing against them. All right. I said it would be quick, so let's be quick here. What does Sammy said? What does Sammy say? JB says, do you think we should have come out running the ball instead of trying to flex and throwing the ball? Well, when it was all said and done, McCaffrey, was pretty efficient without a lot of touches. I wasn't overly concerned about it. I didn't feel like it was inappropriate, the level to which they threw the football, because a lot of it was working. Now, they threw Brock 4 interceptions, but they were also hitting huge plays left and right. Like, the thing the Niners had planned to do, a lot of it worked. Now, sometimes they couldn't protect Brock, and Brock made some mistakes, but I didn't think there was a major, flaw in their plan that got exposed necessarily. Keeping the Faith says, giving Shanahan a first look, then potentially 2 weeks to prepare for a rematch in the Super Bowl is a good thing. I agree. Now, clearly their defensive coordinator is a very good coach. He's been a very good coach. I think he's been highly thought of for a while now. Definitely, even by when he went to Michigan, definitely since he's come back. So the question is, would Kyle take advantage of that? Would Kyle do, here's what we do, and we're not really going to change much? I think there's some fundamental part of that's what the 49ers are, but you would have to think giving him an advanced look would be a benefit. So the best film adaptation of Christmas Carol is George C. Scott's TV movie from the 80s. Yeah, he plays Ebenezer Scrooge. If you don't know George C. Scott, legendary actor. His line, I don't know if it's exactly like it was in the book, but his line in the movie is, "I will not be the man I must have been but for this visitation. Why show me this if I am past all hope? So he's begging with the Spirit. I can change, right? I can change, right? Um, is this 49er content? It's whatever you want it to be, man. Guy thinks he's Colin, wants John to worship him. Let me tell you something. Since Cowherd started it, probably in like 2000 and I don't know, 7. I don't know when it started for him, when he started, but he changed the entire game. Like nobody was doing elaborate analogies the way he does it. And not that I could tell until he started. Like Rome was doing his thing, taking calls. And then most shows were just open up the mic, spray a take, open up the phones, take a bunch of calls. And the influence that he had across specifically sports talk was like, you cannot turn on a local radio station for the 20 years that followed and not hear analogies. But it's just trying to, people trying to tell stories, which is not that in and of itself is not a unique concept. Darnold's just as good as Purdy. I don't think there's evidence of that. I said this last night after the game, and I thought that the more I thought about it, the worse it was. The way Darnold handled that goal line situation, down by 7, Niners had no business being in that game, none. And Darnold, despite that, it felt like they were playing with house money. And you're like, well, what happens here really doesn't matter because they don't really deserve to be down by 7. But they had 3 timeouts. They were about to hit the 2-minute warning. They got stuffed on the run play. Okay, fine. Kyle doesn't want to run it again because he doesn't think A, his line can get the push, and B, doesn't want to waste the timeout. And then Darnold takes the sack of all sacks. If you had a sniff of, maybe this guy's the guy. In hindsight, it was the right thing. I thought at the time, keep Purdy out of there. He has stinger. This offensive line can't protect him. The odds that Brock would have made the right play, I think, are much higher in that exact situation, despite all that he'd been through. I think we're much higher than, what happened with Darnold was about as bad as it can get. So, I don't think there's a lot of evidence of it. And by the way, you're talking to somebody who preseason, if you guys were here, anybody that was here before the season started, you're on this channel. If you're new, great. But, I was very intrigued throughout camp with Sam Darnold, much more than I'd been at any. I was not a Darnold guy, quote unquote, in his career, but I was very intrigued throughout camp. Part of it was just thinking that he's better than Trey Lance in camp, but I did not think he deserved no shot. Like, I was interested in him, but I just think the processing power of Brock Purdy has proven to be pretty special. And that may have been a potential silver lining. That's right. Brock has had an off game against a top D. Kyle ignored the ground success, kept throwing. Spread formations at a great defensive scheme and bad pass protection. Darnold's had an off career. That's a complete thought there. JB says Brock was sloppy with the ball towards the end, especially when he tossed it behind while getting the sack. That's all bad. If you wanted to watch Brock, every time I think you saw him on Monday, I thought, is he a little rattled by this? Is he shaking? He would do a no-look pass. He did the no-look pass to McCaffrey. I thought, well, now that's a different spot, right? That's fourth quarter. Fourth down, desperate situation, desperate play. But I don't know. That's not the kind of play a guy who's going into his shell makes. Even though sometimes it felt like from a body language standpoint, you look at his face, you're like, is he going into a shell? I can't quite tell. But then he made several throws after mistakes that were good. I've said it a couple times before, I think, but I have a buddy named Yogi Roth who I worked with a lot doing Pac-12 football, and Yogi's an analyst, does a lot of Elite 11 stuff and works with quarterbacks. And he told me about this phrase years ago called or acronym PACE, PACE, stands for plays after critical errors. And it's part of what they talk to quarterbacks about, but it applies. I mean, I've used it in broadcasting and applies in life, right? Like something goes wrong. What do you do next? And it's kind of a reminder that something will go wrong, and you have to prepare yourself for being to handle that thing going wrong and then pivoting plays after critical errors. And I thought Brock's actions when it came to those situations, I thought he had good pace, plays after critical errors. Now, he made more critical errors, but I mean, it got to him a little bit. I don't think how could it not? But he still stepped up and tried to make throws. Didn't look like he shied away from throws. Whatever that's worth, time will tell. Like, this thing has to play itself out. We've got to watch him respond. We've got to watch him in the postseason. Will he get another shot at them? Will he get a shot in the Super Bowl? Will he, whatever. Like, he's going to get more of these chances here. That was a big shot. That was his big chance. That was one of his big chances so far. So, Candido, O-line is beat up. Defense looks slow. Chains are rattling. O-line is beat up. Defense, I thought things got away from them a little bit, but then they reined it back in. And they held Baltimore to some field goals, forced some punts. It made no sense that they had a shot to cut that thing to 1. And really, they should. I mean, knock it on the doorstep there on second down. So they're on the goal line. I did not think the defense was their problem. Thus far, when Brock faces a good defense, he pretty much melts down. Browns, Ravens. Yeah, I mean, those were his 2 worst games, right? He was sub 50% in the Cleveland game. But then, on that last drive, did enough to put him in field goal position for Moody to hit a kick. He makes that kick. I don't think we're talking about that game that way. But they're in that position because he didn't play great that game. I didn't think he melted down. I didn't think what we saw on Monday night was a meltdown. We saw a very bad game. We saw a ton of mistakes. I didn't think what we saw was a meltdown. You're too logical and reasonable on Purdy analysis for the fanatic fan base. Step it up and be flagrant. I am the moderate that everyone else claims to be. Everybody's a moderate. Question, thoughts on Purdy's height being an issue against the Ravens D-line? Too many batted tip passes. Big issue versus the Ravens, in my opinion. Well, one of the interceptions was batted at the line of scrimmage. Was there a second ball batted at the line? He had an interception where he got hit as he threw it. It is what it is. I mean, he's, I think, overcome that. Will it sometimes be an issue for him that he's not 6'4"? Yeah. That part of his game, though, like, I don't think that's what's going to be I don't think that will be what holds him back. I think he's proven pretty well. He's adjusted. Guys have done it. And a lot of it comes with, getting rid of the ball quickly and throwing with anticipation, which he does. So I don't think that's, it's going to happen. Like, you're just going to have to accept that sometimes it happens. Tall guys get balls batted down too sometimes. Defensive linemen are big. They jump high. Their hands are massive. So, I don't think that's going to be the thing. It is a thing that's just going to happen sometimes. I don't think that's going to be the thing that is the weakness against any particular defense or the thing that stops him from becoming, whatever his best could be. Bewick says, it's one bad game. Purdy will be fine. Just need to run the ball more. Yeah, I mean, that game was close for so long that it felt like running the ball effectively, that they could have done it. In the moment, and maybe you guys all felt like that in the moment, or the people that are saying that felt like that in the moment. God, in the moment, they were hitting a lot of pass plays. I do feel a little bit about this game the way I felt about some of the other bad Purdy games, where you go, it wasn't all one thing. Sometimes you watch a guy who has a 4 interception game. If you go back and watch the tape, he's just off the whole night. Just bad play, bad play, bad play, bad play. He was making some fantastic throws throughout the game. I'm not trying to rewrite the history and say he was great or whatever, but you could sometimes if a guy has 4 picks, you can cut out those 4 picks from the game tape, and you can watch the rest of it and go, "Oh, this is not good." With Brock, the rest of it, almost all there were a couple. There was the one ball through Willie Snead's hand, where Brock got pressure off his right, got the ball out probably a hair too quick. Willie Snead kind of got caught up coming out of the break. Doesn't get turned around in time. Isn't able to get his hands up in time. Kind of hits the defender right in the face. A lot going on there. If that's Jennings, whatever, I don't know. That was a dangerous play, but for the most part, a lot of the stuff he did a lot of other stuff very good. Now you can't get a passing grade when you throw 4 interceptions. It's about impossible. The 81 NFC Championship game, better known as the catch game, Montana had 3 interceptions against the Cowboys. He also fumbled in that game. I don't think he lost the fumble, but he had 3 picks, but he made one of the most iconic throws in NFL history at the end, passing grade, won the game, went to the Super Bowl, passing grade. 4 picks and a loss, failing grade, no question about it. But, I didn't watch the thing go, there's nothing good here. And he shows no signs of the real Brock Purdy. The real Brock Purdy was in there. He was in there. He wasn't there the whole time. The real Brock Purdy, I think, actually is the one that threw the pick on the play that had all the flags on it when he threw it back over the middle. The real Brock Purdy was not the one that threw the first pick. So, that's bad. In other words, that was bad. He doesn't throw the pick. He doesn't throw a pick like that. So, Kyle Shanahan chokes against good teams always. Why does he not just run the ball? I don't agree that he chokes against good teams. And it's kind of funny, right, that you watch it. It's rare that you watch a Shanahan game and go, why didn't he run the ball more? I thought they were effective throwing it. So you look up and go, McCaffrey had whatever he had, 14 carries, not enough. That's, I don't think anyone's really going to argue with that. Christian had 14 carries and 6 catches. So we got the ball in McCaffrey's hands 20 times. That Debo run play didn't work, but I don't know. I did not think that's what cost them the game. What I thought cost them the game was the 4 picks. And I think they got a gift. They got a gift in that they got to see the future. It's Raider guy back. Never left. Mike asks Mike says, what this game reaffirms is that we have to invest in our offensive line. What we make work for most of the time. What we have works most of the time, not against great defenses. They have to hit. Part of this goes back to, I don't want to rehash this because I talked about it a lot last night, but part of this goes back to they're just not a quick strike, deep ball, 3-play drive touchdown team. And when you're not that type when you don't have that in the bag, and I know they do hit explosives, but they don't hit that play, right? DK, Justin Jefferson, boom, got it, touchdown. And when you don't have that, you've got to hit 5, 6, 7 plays in a row. And it's harder to do that. It's harder to sustain long drives against good defenses. But, I did not watch them and think they were incapable of beating Baltimore or that they're incapable of beating a good defense. Against a lesser team, they could have overcome a couple of those and maybe they throw less of them. But I am not in the camp, and I don't know if by Victor is or somebody else is. I'm sure there are other people that feel that way. I'm not in the camp of incapable. I do agree with that last comment I threw up there, and Mike, I do agree with what Mike said, which is their offensive line depth is an issue. One of these days, Trent Williams is going to retire, and they will need even greater offensive line play. And that's where when you look up and go, okay, nobody wants Brandon Ayuk gone, but could you immediately get Trent Williams' replacement if you traded Brandon Ayuk? That would be the hope, right? You would trade him in hopes of getting into the top 15 of an NFL draft. Maybe you need to make 2 trades to do it, and getting a blue chip tackle. A refusal to criticize Shanahan is interesting. I don't know about a refusal to criticize Shanahan. Kyle gets plenty of criticism. I think we question what he does all the time. I'm just telling you, in the moment, it's easy to go back. Now, some of you guys are saying he should have run the ball more. Okay, that's a legit take. I thought they were picking up huge chunks in the pass game. I did not think that's why they lost the game. It's my ultimate point. This is where the Trey Lance trade comes back to haunt you. Yeah, I mean, do you get to be haunted by the Trey Lance trade if you also found your quarterback with the last pick of the draft? I don't know that you do. I don't think you get to be haunted by that. Two things were put to rest last night. Purdy as the league MVP and Kyle as coach of the year. Kyle's less than genius game plan made sure of that. I mean, I don't think he was going to be coach. I don't really think he was in the running for that award. But the award tends to be, I think, even less kind of analytical than I watched this one game and you didn't match up well with that coach. It's just, we thought, congrats. No one wins at the place you are, or no one's won in a while at the place you are, Brian Daboll, and you won some games. Nobody's ever won. There are people who live lives that have never seen Detroit any good. Dan Campbell, congrats. It's simple. It's simple than that. It's simple. Purdy still looking good. I mean, yeah. I'll ask this question briefly again. Not a doctor. Why has he gotten a stinger 2 weeks in a row? Something I'm just aware of. Some people thought that's an overreaction. Some people think it's legit. He's got a stinger back-to-back. We've seen Sam Darnold play in back-to-back weeks earlier than he would have played. Why? Is that a thing that never happens again? That'd be cool. That'd be fine. RS, were the Ravens stacking the box to force Purdy to throw? He saw some 5-man pressures, but I didn't think they were forcing him to throw necessarily. Jedi asked, can you be stinger prone? Great question. That's the question I'm asking. Does one stinger make another stinger more likely? Get a doctor on the phone. I'm not sure. But here is what I know. If they're in the Super Bowl, there's a good chance they're seeing Baltimore again. And if they see Baltimore again, they're better for having played that game, lost that game, than having not played that game at all. Now, if you see Buffalo, maybe you would have wanted to see Buffalo. If you get Kansas City, maybe you would have wanted to see Kansas City. But you got Baltimore. And right now, they look like the team most likely to be in the Super Bowl. So you got them. They kicked your butt. As long as that doesn't rattle your confidence, which for the rest of the team, I don't think it will. For Brock, we're about to find out. And as long as you learn something from it that you can play chess back, then you're okay. I think they can win that game. Right now, Baltimore will be favored, though. All right. Thanks for hanging. That was quick-ish. Appreciate you guys. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. That always helps. More people see it that way, and that makes me happy. Okay, everybody. Adios.